Questions? I think basically we're trying to determine where we believe, if everything goes according to plan and everybody does the right thing with respect to getting vaccinated, and we continue to see positive progress on our case counts and our hospitalizations, we believe by then we can be in a point where we can move to more fully reopen. But obviously, some of this is going to be a function of continued performance on vaccinations and continued improvement on the healthcare metrics that have been such an important part of this since the beginning.
Is the pace of vaccinations going better than even you expected right now, and that's why you were able to kind of come up with that date and maybe even earlier?
I mean, we've been a national leader among all large states now for over a month, and we've more or less hit most of the marks that we established with respect to when we thought different parts of the Commonwealth would become eligible to get vaccinated. I think the big question we just don't know the answer to at this point is what's going to be going on with supply and what's going to be going on with respect to continued demand. So far in Massachusetts, for the most part, we've had at least as much demand as we've had supply, and in many cases had more demand than we've had supply. And that continues to be true. When the Lieutenant Governor and I were out at the Berkshire Regional Collaborative last week, they said the last round of appointments that they posted got booked in less than 10 minutes. There's a tremendous amount of interest in Massachusetts, as I said in my remarks, in getting vaccinated. If people continue to pursue that policy going forward into the month of May and June, we'll make a tremendous amount of progress to getting to the point where a vast majority of the people who need to be vaccinated here will be.
Governor, any date for when you might possibly think about lifting the indoor mask mandate? And also, separately, any thought to giving different rules for vaccinated people versus unvaccinated going forward?
So I think the feds have basically said they're not going to get into the business of rules around vaccinated versus unvaccinated and where they can be. This would be almost impossible to do at a state level if the feds aren't going to do anything here. I do hope the feds at some point start having conversations about travel. And I don't mean like state-to-state travel, I mean international travel. I think that's going to be a really important issue for this country and for other countries to have some sort of global conversation about how travel is going to work relative to what's happening with respect to case counts and vaccinations around the world. With respect to, what was the first part of your question?
The indoor mask mandate. When would you put a date on when you lift that? Is that way far away? What's your thought?
I think the biggest question around, well, first of all, I mean, I think everybody at this point agrees that outdoor is different than indoor. And there have been a number of studies done to validate that. I think the question with respect to indoor around masks is going to be a function of both the public health data, vaccination rates, and the ongoing research that is continually occurring with respect to issues around safety and protocols. And I can tell you this, that at this point in time, we believe the vast majority of the rules that are in place with respect to masks indoors have had a lot to do with helping us manage case counts and hospitalizations, and they've been a good thing. And I certainly believe that one of the reasons why there's virtually no demonstrated in-school transmission, going all the way back to August of last year here in Massachusetts, has been because the schools in Massachusetts that went back in person enthusiastically adopted the rules associated with masks.
Governor, is the next big stressor for all of you as you do this reopening? And then I know you love sports analogies. Can you just Boston Marathon? Are we coming like down Boylston Capitol Grill, or are we still on Newton as far as on the reopening? If you use that analogy.
Honestly, I'm not sure I can answer that question except to say that I know I speak for everybody up here when I say how grateful we are that so many people in Massachusetts have stepped up and gotten vaccinated and played by the rules for such a long period of time. We are, in many respects, a national leader on vaccines, in part because I think we built a really strong vaccination network to administer vaccines, but also because the people here in the Commonwealth wanted to get vaccinated. We did a lot of things to help move that process along, but in the end, people here, I mean, if you think about it, we have 2.4 million people who are double dosed, fully vaccinated, okay? We also have another 1.2 million people who have received one dose. And based on the current rate at which those folks follow through and get their second dose, they are going to get their second dose, which means we've already got about 3.6 million people in Massachusetts who are on track to be fully vaccinated. We continue to see somewhere, as I said before, in the vicinity of 40 to 50,000 people a day getting a first dose. Every day that goes by where that happens, you have 40 or 50,000 people who will get a second dose and be fully vaccinated. I think the trends here over the course of this have been an incredibly positive statement made by the people of Massachusetts and have made it possible for us to move to the point where we can start to contemplate getting past a lot of the rules and the regulations and the restrictions that have been in place for over a year. So I would say we are certainly more than past the midway point of this.
Governor, did I hear you say that we might be able to move up the August 1 date? It could indeed happen earlier. And what do you think it would take data-wise us to get there?
Well, the big measurements are vaccinations, hospitalizations, case counts. Those are the three big things we've been paying attention to.
Is the state's
Are you
DPH
saying if the federal supply ramps up, then we could perhaps move it up?
I mean, I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but the point is we need to continue to see the kind of momentum that we have seen on vaccinations going forward over the course of the next 6 weeks and deep into the month of May, which I fully expect is possible.
Is the order,
Go ahead.
does the DPH order restricting hospital visitors remain in place, or how is that going to be addressed?
Can you speak to that?
So we have visitation in hospitals. Hospitals can obviously put some requirements in and limit the numbers, but there hasn't been complaints about other than the numbers of people who can go visit at any one time. So I'm not expecting that we're going to make any changes to the current hospital rules that we have in place.
Governor, given the state of emergency has allowed you to put these various orders and restrictions in, with a lot of those ending August 1st, and you also have a timeline now for ending state of emergency restrictions.
Well, obviously, we pay a lot of attention to the data that I just discussed when it comes to making decisions and making calls about what we do as an administration within the framework of that emergency order. And that's obviously one of the things that we will continue to review on a pretty regular basis based on what the data tells us with respect to where we are.
But if the data allows a full reopening, the state of emergency follows soon after, given it's in place for you to do those things that are now ending.
Like I said, we're going to follow. There's a lot of pieces to this, and we're basically going to let the data drive the decision making.
Governor, do the local boards of health have the resources to be able to do all these sign-offs on safety plans that is called for in some of these?
They've been doing the sign-offs on the safety plans for about a year. I think the long story short here is there should be less of them when we get to the point where it's DPH issuing orders under its existing statutory authority and local boards of health operating within their existing statutory authority than what we've been doing for the better part of the past year, if I understand your question.
Well, a lot of businesses still have to submit a local plan where with the release, they have to submit a local plan. This is what we plan to do for this reopening.
Yeah, I think there will be less of that.
Governor, you sort of shied away from doing anything about what you said today, setting rules on what businesses and corporations
No, what we've said all along here is whether you're vaccinated or not is less important to us than the nature of the venue that you're talking about or the place you're talking about and what the rules are that exist for that particular place. So whether you're vaccinated, if you go to Fenway Park, whether you're vaccinated or not, we're going to expect you to wear a mask and socially distance, period.
That's not my question. My question is if businesses and venues and what have you, as we get closer to that August 1st day, they say we only want vaccinated people here. You said,
They have the authority under existing state law to make that decision.
can they do that right now?
Yeah, they probably could.
So why not build some consistency? You sort of suggesting you don't want to get it. That's the Fed's responsibility, and they shouldn't get involved. Why? Everybody could have their own rules.
Look, I fully expect that as this moves forward, you're going to see businesses make a lot of different decisions based on the nature of their business, the nature of their customer base, the nature of their employee community, and the nature of the way they feel about all of this stuff. People are going to make different kinds of decisions about how they're going to handle this. I mean, I've talked to some businesses who've said that they're not going to require everybody to come back, but if you want to go back, you're going to need to be vaccinated. And if you do come back and you are vaccinated, then there will be a set of rules that will either be built off the ones the Department of Public Health already has in place, or others that will determine the way those offices operate. I think that's the appropriate way to do this. I don't think we should do this with a one-size-fits-all. I think we should let employers, let businesses based on let organizations based on the people they serve, the folks who work for them, and the nature of whatever the particular concerns they might have about spread and about COVID drive the way they make decisions about how to handle that stuff.
Do you still have reservations about vaccine passports, or what if that becomes the norm?
Say again?
When it comes to vaccine passports, the last time I asked you, you mentioned it could be seen as a barrier for some. What if that becomes the norm or more widely used in the private sector? Do you still see issues with that, or has your stance changed?
I don't understand the question.
How do you feel now about vaccine passports?
Passports?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you were asking me about a vaccine task force.
No, no.
Okay.
Has your stance about them
I don't,
changed?
no, my stance has not changed. I think if the feds want to put some sort of structure in place that operates at a national level, that's their call. But if there's not going to be a national strategy, I don't think states should be doing this one at a time.
What is
Did you get a
your
second
plan
shot
for the
on
state's
that?
workforce?
Pardon me?
The plan for the state's workforce, you talk a little bit about how private businesses can make their own decisions on whether or not to have people back full time. What's the plan for the state?
Well, keep in mind that a lot of people who work in state government, like in many cases in private businesses and in municipal businesses, need to be at work. It's pretty hard to operate a lot of the sort of core functionality of state government without people actually going to work. And we've had rules and protocols and standards in place since the beginning of the pandemic for those folks. I would expect that at some point over the course of the summer, we will move to more people being, quote unquote, back in the office, back at work, but it's probably going to be in some sort of a hybrid type model.
Governor,
Did you get
it
your
is,
second shot yet? Was it scheduled?
Nope, later today.
Governor, it's crazy to me that it was May 18th when you guys announced this reopening plan. Now we're here almost a year later. I mean, is this a huge sigh of relief for you, or any reflection or thoughts of just being here at this moment, announcing maybe the light at the end of the tunnel?
I guess I would say that, and again, I know I speak for everybody up here, that we all know how hard this year has been because our phones and our emails and our written correspondence that we have gotten, along with the thousands of conversations we've had with people, have made very clear to us how hard this year has been on everybody. And I also get the fact that in many cases, a lot of these decisions that we needed to make based on the data that was available were destined to make lots of people unhappy. And that's why I think I said earlier, we are so grateful that people here in the Commonwealth want to get vaccinated, want to solve this problem, want to put this thing behind us, and know that the fastest and best way that we can all participate in making that happen is by getting vaccinated. The people in Massachusetts have been incredible every step of the way in terms of their flexibility, their resiliency, their creativity, their support for one another, their willingness to make clear to us about what they don't like about what we do, which I also appreciate. We learn a lot from that. But especially around this vaccination issue. I talk to other governors all the time, all right? And many of them would give anything to have the same level of excitement and enthusiasm and commitment to getting vaccinated in their states that we see here. It's an incredibly powerful piece of momentum, and I hope it stays with us because it will help us ultimately turn the corner and begin to think about this in a very different way. And I think I think I can speak for these folks, because I know I speak for a lot of people in Massachusetts. This has easily been the longest year of my life. And I think for a lot of people, it's been the longest and most difficult, and in some cases, the most brutal. I take tremendous, I can't tell you how grateful I am that my dad survived this whole thing. Because that sure wasn't true for a lot of other people. And I got asked, in one of my interviews with somebody, I got asked, well, what's the first thing you want to do when things are like totally back to normal? I said, I want to take my kids and my wife and go to a concert. That's what I want to do. But I don't want to do that until we get to the point where that can be done in a way where people people won't be putting one another and each other at risk by virtue of doing that.
Governor, you mentioned that you're hoping more state workers come back. Do you require them to be vaccinated?
I don't think we're going to require people to be vaccinated, no.
So your position might be different from a private business.
Correct.
And what's your rationale for that?
Still a free country the last time I checked. And my company, our company, the executive branch of state government, is a lot different than many other businesses in Massachusetts. Do we have hundreds of thousands of businesses? We certainly have tens of thousands of businesses. I think we have hundreds of thousands. We have hundreds of thousands of businesses of all different shapes and sizes that do all kinds of different things that are spread across 351 cities and towns. The idea that we should have one set of rules for all of them as we come back out of this thing just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Governor, would you encourage municipalities to start opening their buildings back up? A lot of some towns, town offices are so close, they're not accessible. Do you think that fits into the reopening process?
I mean, I would hope that as more and more people get vaccinated, local communities would be able to figure out a way to get that done. I voted today in Swampscott, and I didn't get to vote across the street at the church, which is where I've normally voted. I had to go vote at the high school. And they did a really great job of sort of figuring out what the safety protocols and the process for voting in person would be there. And I think, you know, again, we have 351 cities and towns. They're very different in terms of how they're organized, what resources are available to them, and how they would go about deciding the best way to do their work. But I would hope and anticipate that if we continue to make the progress we've been making, I would hope to see more and more people in a position to feel comfortable that they can open up their front door. Yeah.
Did you get your second shot?
scheduled for tomorrow, the second shot, back for a little bit of a
So when you deliver 2.4 million second doses, right? That's how many people are fully vaccinated here. We all hear from, I haven't heard from all 2.4 million, but I've heard from a lot of people. And honestly, the distribution with respect to, you know, nothing at all to, you know, flat on my back for 2 days to the sore arm or somewhere in between, I don't think there is like a standard response that people have to this. And I'm obviously going to play it by ear, but I'm really glad I'm getting my second shot, because that means 2 weeks from now I can hug my dad, which I haven't done yet. So, thanks.